So then do we need to invite people in, Brian, or do you do that?
Mr. Chairman, they are listed as attendees, and you can instruct them to raise their hand digitally through the Zoom, and then I'll wait for your instruction as to how and when to bring them in.
So I've got participants on the screen. Then and where are the, oh, I see, there's the attendees. All right, I got it.
Mr. Chairman, you are live on YouTube.
Okay, great. And do you see Representative Greer? Yeah, I see him. So yeah, have Mike come in, please.
You might want to let Representative Ayer in as well.
Yeah, Danny Ayer. Representative Chairman Greer, welcome to the JAC First Re-Referral Committee hearing. We have House Bill 9. I think you and Representative Ayer, I think we're going to try to let in as well. And if you would, just walk us through the appropriation.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Mr. Chairman?
I can.
Okay.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman,
it's fun to be in front of House Appropriations. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Chairman, maybe before Chairman Greer starts, I think we've got Clarence Stivar invited in. We wanted to invite Danny Ayer in, Ryan.
Yes.
Got it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else on that list we need to have come in? All right, go ahead, Representative Greer.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and committee members. Real quick, and this is one of those areas where we don't really have an appropriation in here. We have an employee. So this short-time compensation plan is going to require quite a bit of work to get stood up. And I think right now with the volume of work going on with workforce services, they're having a hard time just keeping up with regular the unemployment. And this plan, if it happens, it'll require an agreement to be worked together with the department and with an employer. And again, you'll hear about this bill, but it is an employer-driven initiative here. So on page, make sure I'm still getting used to working everything online. Sorry about that. But the appropriations in section 4 on page 21. Okay, this is the way this worked when we did this bill early in the year, was an at-will to stand this up, and we weren't quite sure where everything was at with the CARES Act dollars and unemployment. What the committee did, and I don't know if you have that available or in front of you, but we have a standing committee amendment. Instead of the AWAC with the dates on it, and at the request of the department, and something that the committee agreed with wholeheartly, was to go with, and we'll delete the at will and insert a full-time equivalent. That's on page 21, line 5. So an FTE requires your action. And then further on that same page 21, line 8, what we've inserted is that the position shall be funded from available federal funds for the program established by this act as they may be available. So it's a bit awkward. I'm glad you gentlemen are having a look at it, but the fact is the money's going to be there from the federal government. Just as they're standing this up, we're not quite certain. So we use that soft language.
Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Thanks. And so Chairman Greer, I think I was seeing that in a previous conversation that maybe took place where you was kind of pressing us for this a little bit, that I think that comes back to the for services through a reimbursement. And so this funding would get the upfront costs, and then they would likely be able to make that up on a reimbursement format. Do I understand that accurately?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Larson, we don't have an appropriation in this bill.
It's just
right. And so they're going to have to find the money and work around how to do that. That's why we got that B11. They got to report to you anyway. You guys, they're going to have to report all of this to JAC anyway, one way or another. And then when we come up on the new budget in a year, you can give it and you can take it away, the FTE. So just one of those things to keep on your radar, I suspect. But they were, and I believe them. I mean, it wasn't, the new position is going to be required to get this program stood up. I think after a year's review, we get through the pandemic, you guys may say, you know what, you can shift your resources from elsewhere and pull that FTE back. So they're going to be up on their own trying to scramble around to find the money initially, hoping for the reimbursement.
Representative Kinner.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Any further discussion?
Do pass.
The motion to do pass, seconded by Representative Larson. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Greer, reading the fiscal note, the Department of Workforce Services says that the short-term compensation program would decrease the revenue to the agency. Could you explain a little more what they are referring to in their fiscal note?
I'll try to, because I did not understand the fiscal note myself. But Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, the only I can think of on that is that this is an overall savings to the trust fund. So I couldn't make heads or tails out of the fiscal note. So sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't either. That's why I was hoping Chairman Greer would aid in that, but I can see we're both at a loss, so that's just fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Greer.
And we don't have anybody from the department in the attendees, do we? So, yeah, I think it's an interesting question because I'd like to understand it as well, but any further discussions? So I believe we need a roll call vote. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, there is no public comment. I don't know we really take it on re-referrals anyway.
That's at your prerogative, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
So,
Ryan.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on House Bill 9, Short-Time Compensation Program. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
9-9.
Thank you.
Next, thank you. Thank you.
Let's let in Representative Wilson, and we'll do House Bill 4.
Mr. Chairman, you may want to let in Andy Somerville, Clarence Stivar, Patrick Sweeney, Pepper Ottman. Those are the ones I know on Labor Hill.
Get those, Ryan?
Representative Larson, could you please repeat that?
So we got, looks like you got Andy and Pat. We need Representative Stivar, Representative Ottman, and we probably ought to be letting Albert, Representative Summers in. I think he wants to be here for the duration.
I believe I got everybody, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative Stivar, you're raising your hand at us or you're waving at somebody else?
I'm raising my hand. I'm here for the transportation bill.
Which is?
17.
17. Okay, we're doing number 4 first. In order to, Ryan, can he come in and come out?
Correct. Yeah, I can move Representative Stivar back to an attendee and just wait.
Okay.
Let him back in.
Thank you. And so, Andy, can you see the attendee list? Is there anyone else on that attendee list that would you think would want present here, or Sue? Okay. With that, someone needs to turn Sue on.
I'm on.
All right. And are you going to present the bill?
I am, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much for moving it up. It really is a very short little thing. It has no appropriation. So, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 4 is Mental Health Professions Practice Act. We've seen the essence of this bill for the last couple of years in the chamber. The licensing aspect is something that isn't really, I mean, I can explain it if you want me to, but the only reason that this bill is before you is on page 4, line 15. We have a category, certified mental health worker, that we're bringing in here, and line 15 points out that there will be the appropriate fee charged by the licensing board. So then if you look at the fiscal note, you will see that they suspect that there will be $6,000 of special revenue from the certified mental health worker fees. So, Mr. Chairman, the fee that they would plan to charge is the same $300 every 2 years that the other bachelor's degree level workers pay. So it fits in with all the other ones that they do. And in fact, most of these workers don't pay their own fee. It's very often paid by the employer. So, Mr. Chairman, that's really, I promised a 3-minute explanation, so I'd be glad to answer questions, but that's the 3-minute version.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Larson.
and those go, Chairman Wilson, those go back to the board, right?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that's correct. This is one of those boards where they take the fees and operate their copier and whatnot with it, so.
Thank you. Motion do pass.
Any further questions? Motion do pass by Representative Larson, seconded by Representative Kinner. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairwoman Wilson, do we know what the balance is in that fund at the moment?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz, I'm not sure about the balance in the fund. I do see that the governor's rec for the previous budget biennium for the board in its entirety was something around $260,000. I think that they, I don't know what the actual balance is.
Further questions? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none. Roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, House Bill 4, Mental Health Professions Practice Acts Amendment. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
9-9,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Beth, thank you. All right,
a good
now we'll go to
lunch.
House Bill 2, School Buildings and Facilities Study.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters here, and I will be presenting this.
All right. Representative Walters, is there anyone in the attendees that you think may want to be participating?
Ms. Heitrick from the Department of Construction School Facilities Division.
Remind us the bill number, please.
House Bill number 2.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Representative Walters. This is Ryan. Who did you want admitted in?
Tanya Heitrick from State Construction.
Representative Walters, I don't see them in the waiting room. If they're here, perhaps they could raise their hand. That would flag it for me. But I'll let them in as soon as I see them, Representative Walters.
Perfect.
Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So House Bill 2 comes to you from the Select Committee for School Facilities, of which I am the co-chairman on that committee. And what this does is it designates the funding for the upcoming school facilities study. And this study occurs every 4 years. However, the capacity and condition study that it goes on every 4 years was delayed from last summer, the summer of 2020, and will be conducted in the summer of 2021 because we are adding to that study a study of suitability. And so with that, the same consultants will go out and do the work for capacity, condition, and suitability. They'll be walking through the same buildings at the same time. And in doing so, we thought it would be more efficient rather than do one study one summer and the same study or a similar walk through the following summer. And so that's the plan of attack. The appropriation of $6 million in the school capital construction budget, starting in about 2016, there was always a line item set for a set aside to do this study. In 2016, we, the legislature, started utilizing that funding in that line item for other projects, knowing that when this study came up, we would just have to fund it in a lump sum versus the approach that had been taken in the past of put a little bit away each year until the study year came about. So with that, it's a $6 million appropriation. The last study was done in 2016, cost in the neighborhood of $2.7 to $3.1 million. So why does this double? Well, we're adding a large new component, and that is the component of suitability. Suitability is in our statute that a building will have technology readiness, will have appropriate ventilation and the appropriateness of the student environment. And so what is that? And over the last 18 months, the School Facilities Commission, along with the division, School Facilities Division, and the Select Committee have came up with a way to objectively measure that. And it is rather extensive, and so that is part of the reason for an increase. And with good luck and good fortune, the department would be able to negotiate down, and we would not expend the full $6 million. But it does, it's a starting point to make sure we could cover those costs. So I'd take any questions without getting too in-depth in the bill.
Questions for Representative? Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, about how many schools get covered by that? And I should know the answer. Is it like 500 schools? Is it more? Is it less? I'm just trying to get to a per school price for this study.
Mr. Chairman, there's approximately 392 schools in the state of Wyoming. There's approximately 1,341 total buildings, all of which get reviewed, parking lots and everything. So to get to a per school price would be kind of difficult due to the differing size of schools. Some schools may involve a elementary, middle school, high school, all in the same building, whereas other districts may have multiple high schools, multiple elementary schools, but approximately 390 total school buildings in the state.
And so do they look at every single building? Representative Walters?
Pardon?
Do they look at every single building?
They do look at every single building, and the purpose for looking at every single building is not to rate the school, but also rate every component within the school. You know, what's the roof look like? How are the windows? How's the HVAC system? Because all of those things, we can replace one of those items, a new roof on a school, and extend the life of a school by many years. We let the roof start leaking and the rest of the structure falls down. And so this study goes into all of those kind of component level evaluations, and then comes up with an overall evaluation of the school. And it's that list that we in the legislature operate off of as we fund component level projects in the school CapCon bill, as we fund new construction projects, whether it be because a capacity has been reached or because the condition of the building has fallen into such disrepair that it's no longer functional. And that's the information that this study provides for us. And we do it every 4 years to make sure that our information is current and relevant.
Representative Stitt.
So, Mr. Chairman, so that's about $15,000 per school for an evaluation of its suitability. And I get it that it's very in-depth. What happens if we cut this by $1 million? I mean, does it all fall apart, or is there any way to do this cheaper? I guess is the question.
I think that would come down to the level of what is being evaluated. I think we can ratchet down the funding to any level we would like to see, but the product that we get out of it will change. If they're only able to spend half the amount of time, will they have a real good view of the roof, of the HVAC to get the pertinent information? And so I think we can ratchet it down to any level we would like to see. And I think the amount of information and data provided will also get ratcheted down at basically a proportionate level.
Representative Kinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Walters, in some of the other areas, we worry about setting a number out there and then all of a sudden our bids come into that number. Is there any way to kind of account for that with this, or is that just what we're going to have to deal with?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question and something the committee wrestled with. And really what you're saying is how can we intertwine this budget number into another budget to where it's not announced what we're willing to pay. And we could not come up with a good way to do that. And that's one of the downsides of government is we do advertise that in many situations, what we're willing to pay.
Yeah,
Well, Representative Walters, couldn't we just strike section 2 and put it in the Capcom bill as a number, and the dollars go directly to and put a number that goes to construction management?
Mr. Chairman, I think we could, and I've pondered that, but I've really wanted the JAC to help me to make that action. I think it would be more appropriately suited in the actual budget bill in a section 300 for school facilities division as a contingency amount or something to that effect.
I agree.
So I'm not sure if we want to eliminate it from this bill at this time. This bill also authorizes the study, so we certainly want to authorize the study. Otherwise, we have the money out there with no action for that other than the statutory requirement. So it's I'm happy to do it either way.
Another way to do that is we could make it 4 million or 5 million, and then put some flex dollars in section 300 or some other place as well. I mean, seems to me that we ought to figure out a way to do it so that we literally have the best price for the best product. I don't know. Your thoughts?
I could completely agree with you. Because this came as a standalone, it made it, and the school facilities did not have a supplemental budget this year. So it made it difficult for me to come up with a creative way to add that in somewhere else. You know, if this were the budget cycle in the budget year, we would have the full school facilities budget in which we could intertwine this funding into as a contingency. But without that, it made it more difficult. But certainly agree with your sentiments and would gladly work with you to figure out a way to make that happen. And with the whole goal in mind of being able to drive down that cost in a RFP situation.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Walters, most of these studies are all done on an hourly rate. I presume this one is. So the function of establishing the value of the contract, the fee schedule that the consultant is going to charge from is really more important because it's an hourly thing. How much ever effort we want to put into it is the level of the product we're going to get out of it. But I'm not, if it was lump sum fees, I would be more worried about this, but hourly rates, someone's going to suggest that they can do the study for 4 million and completely put out inadequate hours to accomplish it. And that will put their proposal more attractive to the selection body.
Mr. Chairman, Hans Hunt is not actually Hans Hunt. It is a link I had shared with Ms. Heitrick from the School Facilities Division, and she may have a better answer to Representative Simpson's question regarding how this kind of a project is bid. If you would allow Ms. Heitrick to participate via Hans.
Let Ms. Heitrick through Hans in.
Hello, I'm obviously looking different today as Mr. Hunt, Representative Hunt. Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear the question. I apologize. I was trying to work with Ryan to get designated as myself.
Now you're up as yourself. Well,
Tanya, the question was really how and I'll let Representative Simpson ask it. He asked it very eloquently. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Tanya, the question is this going to be an hourly rate type of a contract? So the consultants actually determine how many hours they would put in to match the scope of the work.
And I don't know the answer to that question specifically, Mr. Chairman, Representative. The estimate that we received of the $6 million, we arrived at that through a consultation with a group known as FEA. The state has worked with them. They have a long history, I think over 15 years, utilizing this particular contractor to assist with assessments. The one thing I would say about this particular assessment and the price tag is there is an increased amount associated with the educational suitability piece, which has not been assessed previously by the state, but is required statutorily.
So Tanya, in this bidding process, it goes out to public bid, I presume, and in the past, have we had different entities do it, or it's basically been the same company that's done it over and over and over again? So they've got a track record of all the buildings, and they kind of have a data bank to go into it. What happens?
Mr. Chairman, it is released as a bid, just as any other contract is with the state. And previously, you're correct, the assessment from FEA has assisted the state in doing the condition assessments and also in sort of running these preliminary tests in the educational suitability world. That being said, any bidder could be awarded the contract depending on what services they're able to provide. The only caveat to that is we maintain a database known as the AIM database, which basically has thousands, hundreds of thousands of pieces of data. And whatever the contractor puts into place needs to be able to marry to that system. But my understanding is there are other entities that are capable of doing such work.
Representative Walters, have you looked into, or did the committee look into who the firms are that do this work? And I think she said the FEA, I'm not sure what that, and are they the same entity that told you roughly an estimate is that's the company that's going to be doing the work, most likely?
Ms. Heydrich?
Mr. Chairman.
I'll pass that off to you.
Mr. Chairman, FEA did assist in coming up with the proposed budget, but there are certainly other entities that are capable of doing this assessment work. And my understanding is historically, they did look at doing just the educational condition piece, or excuse me, the building condition piece last year. And another firm, I don't know if I can say this publicly, but another firm was in the running for the award of that. And then in conversations with the select committee, it was decided to pull back that potential award in hopes that we could do a consolidated assessment in 2021, inclusive of the educational suitability piece.
So the purpose of consolidating was for efficiencies and I presume cost savings, but instead of cost savings, we've actually just are funding two things at a double the price. So that's what it seems to me. If that was the function, it's not functioning that way. Just off the top of my head.
Mr. Chairman, I think it is cost savings because it would have been, doing them independently would have been more than a doubling of the cost. Doing them independently, we would have probably seen $3.5 to $4 million on each of the studies. And so by combining them, we're seeing it down closer to 75% of what the doubling would have, what the true doubling would have been. And so I do believe there are efficiencies there. And Tanya's predecessor and I visited with other consultants, and they all gave a similar number in that $6 million range when presented with the concept of doing this kind of an assessment that included suitability. And so I would presume that those other contractors would be bidding on this contract in addition to the FEA contractor that has done the work in the past.
Any further questions? Do we have a motion to reduce it by $1 million?
So moved.
There's a motion by Representative Stith to reduce the funding from 6 million to 5 million, seconded by Representative Kinner. Any discussion on the motion? Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I'll vote for it. I mean, my preference would be going back to Representative Kinner's question, which I was trying to ask that similar question, that before we reduce the amount, I just want to find a way to put this in another place. 6 million might be a fine number to appropriate. I know my consulting firm, I've already worked out a bid. It's 5.98 million. And I'm confident we'll get the bid, but I just, before we reduce it, I think we need to resolve the other question personally.
We will resolve the other question, Representative Schwartz.
Right, so therefore I don't want to reduce the appropriation.
Well, we can't do that because of the way that this is lined up in the process. So Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would concur with Representative Schwartz and say let's not reduce it now. But then I would possibly have another amendment to follow this up to see if we could accomplish what the committee's desires might be.
Okay, why don't we table the amendment for the moment, and Representative Walters, go ahead.
What if we were to strike the dollar amount, and I'm going to not propose it as an amendment, but as a concept for discussion here to start with. And if we strike the dollar amount and say that dollars, section 2, it would be appropriated in the amount appropriated in the Senate file or House Bill number 1, the budget bill in 2021. And so then through our budget bill that we will work on in March, we can put in that amount of money. And right here, we just say it's the money that we've appropriated through that budget bill. And then we put in the school facilities section of the budget. We can put in contingency dollars or in a contingency line, an amount that we can agree to at that point.
I like that.
Does a conceptual amendment like that work for the committee?
I think that's a better way to do it, Representative Walters. So we'll consider that a motion, and seconded by Representative Kinner. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, does that essentially just mean that we're striking section 2 of this bill? Is that what it means?
No, I think we'll modify section 2 that.
To modify
sure,
section
my
2
proposal would be to modify section 2 to say that the appropriated amount will be designated in House Bill 1, which is the budget bill. I think it's a House bill this year. If not, it's Senate file 1, whatever it is this year, but in the budget bill, the appropriated amount in the budget bill, and we'll appropriate it in, I'm guessing in 024 cap state construction, somewhere in there in a contingency line. And then we as a committee, as JAC, can come up with what we feel is a suitable dollar amount to fund the project.
Okay, Ryan, did you understand?
And we would leave the other language we'd leave the other language that says this money is only available for these purposes, and anything unspent will revert at the end of the biennium, et cetera, et cetera. So that keeps that language in place by leaving section 2 in with the new language.
So I think what we'll have to do, Ryan, is if we pass this, is as quickly as possible get a draft version to us. So, and we can review it at the end of the day, so we can still kick this out by the end of the day. Is that feasible for you?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's feasible. I'll get this over to our legal division right away.
Okay, and then have them have the draft sent to me and to Representative Walters. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, at that, we would lay this bill back to the end of the day to add that amendment. Is that your plan of attack?
Right. So we'll be complete. We're finished now for this lunch session with House Bill 2. Is that right? Yeah. And we're going to jump over the omnibus water bill because that was going to be presented on the Senate side. And I think Dan Larson was going to come in and tell me when they were ready. Representative Wilson? I'm sorry, Simpson?
Chairman, the other omnibus bill is being presented right now on the Senate side. So the staff at WWDC was just tied up. They'll be here shortly. So if we could just defer that one for another 10 or 15
Yep.
minutes.
We will.
Mr. Chairman, could we maybe look at House Bill 66, the large project funding? I think we're trying to get that out on the floor this afternoon.
That's next. Okay. House Bill 66. Who going to present that?
Paxton ought to be here. Bob Budd. And if not, I can. Maybe Jamie. I don't know.
Jamie.
Mr. Chairman.
How are you?
I'm good. And now that I have the ability to actually speak to you, it's a little odd. I've been kind of jumping around here. So thanks for your patience. And I
So, Jamie, can you, by looking at the attendees, is there anyone else that, on there that we need to admit? I see.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hunt has joined us. He's also Tanya, AKA Tanya.
Okay, anybody else on that list? I thought I saw Bud for a second there, but I don't see him now. Okay, please proceed. Whoever's going to present.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I will hand this over to Representative Hunt.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. We present to you House Bill 66, and this is the annual work of the Wildlife and Natural Resources Select Committee, simply with the annual list of projects that come out of the Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Fund. Committee, you can see on the fiscal note, and one moment I will get it pulled up, that there's a total appropriation being requested of 1.384 million and some change. Mr. Chairman, there are, I believe, 4 projects in this. 2 of them pertain to additional construction of wildlife underpasses for wildlife migration corridors. And in speaking with Representative Paxton, who was the chairman of this select committee over the interim, my understanding, and if he's out there listening in and might want to be brought in, he might correct me on this, but my understanding is that one of those projects is an entirely new migration corridor underpass they will need to construct, and which I do apologize, which one of those that is listed, be it the Dry Piney Mule Deer Crossing or the other, that the Casey Buffalo Mule Deer Crossing, I'm not sure, but Mr. Chairman, one of those will require a complete new construction, including the underpass itself. The other of those projects is simply expanding on what's already there and putting in some additional fencing. Mr. Chairman, on top of that, there's the walking areas and grazing grasses, subsection E, and that is simply for effectively weed and pest control of noxious medusa head and the ventonata species up in the Sheridan area, which is I'm familiar with from my work on the Ag Committee the past couple years. But Mr. Chairman, that is effectively the bill. Again, the total ask on the projects is just a hair under 1.4 million. So, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions. I would also, although before I get to that, I would also add that there was a mistake made by the department which oversees this fund, and so there is an accompanying amendment which ups some of the funding here. And so, if Mr. Chairman, does the committee have that amendment in front of them?
I do, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. Mr. Chairman, if I may, just briefly, just going through that, that equates to page 3, line 20, an increase of about excuse me, no, a little more than that. Anyway, from 349,500 to 699,000. And then page 4, line 3, or I'm sorry, page 5, line 13, we're upping that from 885,000 to just over 1 million. And then on page 7, line 3, we're striking that entirely and inserting $749,856. And again, Mr. Chairman, that was an error of sorts from the department. So that being said, happy to answer any questions.
Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, so Representative Hunt, thank you. So for this biennium, is the effect of this bill to, dollar-wise at least, undo the step 3 reductions that the governor implemented in terms of just dollars? And it seems like that's what it's doing. It's about $500,000 this biennium, and that was the step 3 cut.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Stiff, I am not certain of that, and I do apologize being new to the TOW committee. I did touch base with Representative Paxton on the phone this morning over this, but that's not something that came up, and so I don't know if the good Chairman Flitner can expound on that more than I might be able to.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Representative Stiff, I'm unclear as well. This Appropriations Committee probably understands this process better, but I do know on a fiscal note that it says the appropriations account for approximately 5% of the total project cost expected for the 3 projects in the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So I believe that those 5% cuts, and I'm trying to pull that up, but that is not part, we're not putting that back in. That was to a different program to participate with one of the federal agencies, and I think that's where they took their reductions in that. But I will maybe I've got it, but I don't think that I don't think that this is putting it back. I don't think that this is taking that cut from that program that was being eliminated and putting it back into here. If I understood Representative Hunt, this was just more, and he can correct that, was a miscalculation for the budget bill from the Wildlife Trust Administration in the bill document. I don't think they're trying to slip something. Isn't that right, Hans?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Larson, I believe that is correct. That was there was never any discussion in Mr. Budd's testimony when it was presented to the committee last week of trying to, reverse what the recommendations that the governor's office had put in there. And so Mr. Budd said right out during that testimony, this is a mistake, this is an error, we're, sorry we messed up, but here's the actual numbers that we were supposed to submit to you, and here we are. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go ahead, Representative.
I will add also, just to reiterate, or just to put a point on that, Director Budd just said that he apologized. It was simply an accounting mistake.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Flitner, I have a suggestion for you when you introduce this bill on the floor. We can see on fiscal note or the first line on fiscal note where the money is coming from. But I think it's important for the new members and the listening audience for you to explain what that trust fund is and how it's set up, and those monies are dedicated to the wildlife preservation. So I think it's important to emphasize that.
Representative Kinner.
And I was just noting that on page 3, lines 15 and 16, it says the total project budget is $20,942 in that one area.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
And so in their budget bill on page 12, they take the reduction out of that $7 million appropriation we give them for landscape conservation. And it was a general fund appropriation. They pulled a 1.1 million out of that $7 appropriation.
Okay.
And these funds And the funds that we got here are appropriated out of the revenue generated from the investment income off the corpus.
Okay, any further questions? Any other public comment? I don't see anybody got their hand up in the participants. So Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Representative Hunt or Chairman Flitner, with an increase in funding on those lines proposed in the amendment, does that increase the overall funding total to the project? Or does it just increase the percentage or the share of the state contribution? So to Representative Kenner's point of that project costing 20 million, total project cost is $20 million. Will that increase by the 250,000 approximately of that change, or does that total project cost stay the same?
Go ahead, Hans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Walters. My understanding is that is just the increase to the state's contribution. It does not increase the overall project budget.
Further questions? Representative Kenner.
So just so a clarification, and in looking at it a little bit further, that was for the Piney LaBarge project, and then it's a total project for the other one, the KC Buffalo project was 4.6 million.
Any other questions? Representative Schwartz.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at page 7. It's the budget for the Sheridan invasive grasses. And I'm just curious because the total project budget is 324,000 plus, but then the grant is slightly higher. And I'm just curious why that is.
If someone knows the answer. Representative Albert. Representative Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I have notified Director Budd. He kind of had to go home and attend to his wife really quickly. But he's going to try to get on. So if you have questions, I think he's trying to get on his computer now. So
Ryan, can you see any?
Not there.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see Director Budd in the waiting room, but looks like Representative Newsom has her hand up. I'll let her in now.
Welcome, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 7, on line 3, we had an amendment that made that amount $749,856 to account for, once again, the miscalculation by Mr. Budd.
Okay, that addresses that issue. Any further questions? If Bob comes on, if he wants to just give us a quick discussion, we can just interrupt where we're at, Ryan. Otherwise, just to fill us in, and we can do that after we vote on the fiscal note, just to accommodate Bob if he so chooses. Representative Walters.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I would move the bill do pass.
Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Kinner. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on House Bill 66, 2021 large project funding. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
9-9.
Okay. Next, we have Department of Transportation Communication Facilities, House Bill 15. Looking at the fiscal note, it's a reduction of the general funds of $7,000, it looks like. Is that right? Do we have anyone that's going to present?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to if you'd like me to.
Sure, please proceed. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Appropriations, and I am new, well, renewed to the Corporations Committee, so don't have a solid history on the bill, but basically what it does is updates our Y.dot telecom statutes to allow private telecom companies to utilize existing Y.dot communications towers to bounce signals off of, which is a current practice. I think the question before you in the bill, why the majority floor leader referred it to you, is we are creating a separate account. You'll see right now the roughly $3,500 a year is deposited in the general fund. The Department of Transportation wants to take that $3,500, set up a new account, and have a little bit of money in the account to pay for any maintenance or upgrades to their towers.
And so that funds represents fees collected. Is that right?
Correct. So anyone who uses the Y.dot communication towers pays fees, and it's only if we have excess bandwidth capability. Right now, Y.dot's been putting that in the general fund. As you know, towers have some upkeep and maintenance, and $3,500 is not a lot, but as part of the bill, they said we should start a separate account to pay for some of this maintenance from the users who use our signals.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm curious because, I mean, I've negotiated one or two of the contracts for folks that take space on towers and around the state.
Mm-hmm.
Those contracts can go from $15,000 to $30,000 or higher. So I'm curious why it's only $3,500, and I'm just curious. I just bring it to your attention so that you can. Someone may want to look at it and see if why not assessing a reasonable fee for that service. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was gone for all the discussion in the interim, but their current fiscal deposits to the general fund have been about $3,500. I'm not sure why exactly that is, but they just want to create a separate account that Y.dot would have control over. And
well, ask them about it.
Yeah.
Any other, Joe, Representative McGuire, you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Zwanitzer. I think that this was, he stepped in to save me because I think I was supposed to present the bill, but the testimony in committee was that the majority of these antennas are located in extraordinarily rural areas. And so for that reason, the price is far lower than if it was located in somewhere that would be more popular and there would be more use. In fact, some of these are located in areas where there may not be any bidders at all. That was the testimony that I recall. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Further questions for Representative McGuire or Representative Chairman Zwanitzer? Seeing none, do we have a motion on the bill? Moved by Representative Walters, seconded by Representative Kinner. Roll call.
Do pass.
Do pass. We presumed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on House Bill 15, Department of Transportation Communication Facilities. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
9-9, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next we have House Bill 29, which is also a corporations bill, it looks like.
Chairman Nicholas, Bob Budd is in the waiting room if we want to let him in.
Okay, let's do that before we go on. Welcome, Bob. Go ahead and activate your screen. There we go. Good to see you, neighbor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my tardiness. I do have a legitimate reason. My wife had back surgery yesterday, and so I was a combination nurse and chef prior to getting here. So I apologize for my tardiness, and I understand you had some questions. I'd be happy to answer any of them that I can.
I guess we were just trying to understand the increases from the, and it was, the report indicated that it was an accounting error, but were the bids just come in higher, or kind of how did just wanted to have an understanding of the fee increases?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the question. I explained this in travel and should have thought to get you more information. The accounting error was my inability to add numbers, which is why I'm a biologist and not an accountant. And what I didn't do is account for the money that has been deposited by private sources. So I didn't put our match in, or I didn't put their match in. And that's the difference in the accounting. The one, as you can see real easily, it just doubled it. I have that money in our account. We agreed to match that per the instructions of appropriations last year. The second one, they didn't match 100%. So it's a different number. And then the third one, the Sheridan County project, I failed to account for the first year's total project cost. So the original number was vastly lower than what the total investment on that project is. So that's the reason that those adjustments were made. It's no different. The money is the same to us, but the total amount is obviously different.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And Bob, just to refresh our memory, that was part of the appropriations we put in a couple of years ago, $1 million, and you can give us the right amount that we said that we would make available for matching funds. And I think and this is a result of those matching funds.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that is correct. We really went after a lot of this matching money. We're probably going to overachieve to the tune of about 1.5 million before we're done. But this money, if you look at the Dry Piney project, that matching money came in from the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, the Wildlife Fund, and Muley Fanatics. The second project, which is the KC to Buffalo, that's Wildlife Fund money. And then the third one isn't matching funds in the technical sense of the first two. The genesis of this was the amendment last year by Representative Western that added $3 million for crossing and migration efforts. And this is coming out of that fund. So there's no new money. It's basically my bad math is what it comes down to.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And then Bob, just trying to get our heads around it. The Dry Piney was an existing crossing that you're just doing some enhancements to, and the one up in KC is a new crossing. If you just validate that, and then if you would just go in and so that we can explain on the floor that where you made your reductions in your step 3, we had provided you with appropriation to do some landscape conservation stuff, and you took your cuts from that, if I have that accurately.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, just backwards on the other two projects, Dry Piney is a complete rebuild. That's a $20 million project. I think there are 14 underpasses and the fencing associated with that. KC to Buffalo, the underpasses already exist, but the fencing doesn't keep the animals to use them. They just go wherever they want, and they're attracted to that roadside because it stays green longer and greens up earlier. So this would be just for the fencing on the KC to Buffalo. As to the reductions, both phase 2 and 3, we took out of the project money that you had given us. If you'll recall what you allocated last time, you put it in several different pots. You put in money for projects. There was money to go to the corpus of the trust. And there was a footnote that asked that project money be matched in Western Wyoming, the Western Wyoming Landscape Conservation Initiative. That was deleted out in a footnote. It doesn't matter. We're going to do that anyway because we work so much in that region. It's not going to be a problem to match that. We took our cuts out of the project end and took the full 1.6 million, which was what we were asked to do. That came out of the project side. The rationale there was the Appropriations Committee was fairly emphatic about wanting to put money into the corpus, and we left all of that there. And we think that we can offset some of the reduction in funds from general fund appropriation through interest earnings and earnings on the account, at the trust account, or we'll reduce the number of grants that we give. Does that answer your questions, Representative Larson?
Thank you.
Questions? Okay, Bob, we appreciate it very much. We've already passed it out, but we just kind of appreciate the update.
Yeah, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman, I apologize again for my tardiness, but I'll get the main unit around here healed up, and then I'll probably be better. So thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck to, hopefully she's doing okay. So
she's doing great. Thank you.
All right. For some reason, my mouse is not working. I turned on the other computer screen and I lost my mouse. So I don't have any pictures or any screens on my computer now. Okay, now I just got it back.
Are you ready for water, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I think let's go to the omnibus water bill. 44.
Yep.
All right, and we've got Representative Larson with us.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
And is there anybody else that you want to come in there?
Yes, I think the director, Gebhardt, is ready, I hope.
So Brandon Gebhardt, Ryan, could you let him in? And Dan, if there's anybody else on that list, on the attendees that also may be interested, let Ryan know, yeah?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure Committee Chair Eklund would like to be on.
Okay, and let's put on Representative Eklund. And John, if there's anybody else in that attendee list that wants to participate or testify, just let us know, because we'll have to have Ryan let them in. Or if there's anyone who wants to come in, if you raise your hand, then we can see that on our computer screen. All right, Representative Brandon Gebhardt, please introduce yourself and let's walk us through the fiscal portion of the bill.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you and good afternoon. Brandon Gebhardt, I'm the director of the Wyoming Water Development Office, and I'm presenting on House Bill 44. This is the omnibus water bill for construction. Mr. Chairman, I emailed out the e-blue book, and the second page of that PDF is a pretty good snapshot of what's in it. This is a spreadsheet with all the appropriations. And the first block of that spreadsheet, if you have it, great. If not, I can pull it up and share my screen, whatever your preference.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Does everyone got the email?
That email was actually sent by Riley Taylor at 11:06 a.m.
Thank you. Let me find it. There it is. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first block of projects, these will be the level 3, the construction projects under our new development account, water development account 1. The first 2 projects on that are our annual cloud seeding projects. The first one is the air-based cloud seeding project in the Medicine Bow, Sierra Madre, and usually the Laramie Range project. Our requested appropriations for $728,000. And as part of that, we have a funding partner in the BOPU that contributes to that as well. And that would be on top of the 728. The next project is the ground base for the Wind River Range. Our requested appropriations for $215,000. The project is much larger than that, but the lower basin states of the Colorado River contribute 63% of the overall cost of the program. So our portion of the program is $215,000. And then we also have funding partners in the industry as well as the Green River, Rock Springs, Joint Powers Board, and Pacific Power. The next project in this block is Lander Well and Transmission Pipeline. The request is for $884,400. That's a 67% grant, and 33% would be the responsibility of the sponsor. The next project is the Northwest Rural Water System Improvements. The requested amount, 67% grant, 33% funding from them. Total appropriation, $1,413,700. Next project is the Torrington Well Connection Project. Again, this is 67% grant. Total appropriation, $389,270. So for level 3 new development, the total request is for $3,630,370. Pause for a second if there are any questions on any of those projects.
Any questions? Let me go back to my screen. Anyone got their hand up? Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not opposed to the seeding projects, but I've asked this question in the past and never really gotten a response. Can you provide us with data that, over the years shows possible, the benefits of this? And I know it's difficult because obviously precipitation varies.
10%. Mr. Chairman, we can certainly provide additional information, but it's estimated that these programs increase snowpack by about 10%. And it's variable on any given year as to what the normal would be. And so it's estimated 10% increase.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may say, I appreciate that. That's basically the answer I get. And I just will keep asking if there's some kind of methodology that can give me more accurate data, but it's not something we need to worry about today, probably.
Representative Eklund, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Wyoming was the one that proved as much as we could in the field that cloud seeding would improve the snowpack. And the reason we were able to do it was we have two mountain ranges that are parallel to one another and in the predominant storm direction. And that's the Sierra Madres and the Snowy Range set of mountains. And over a period of years, I don't know how long it was, they collected data. One side would be seeded, the other would be a test, and back and forth. And that's how they come up with the lowest estimate I've heard is that maybe it's down to 6%. Some of the scientists think it could be as high as into the 20s. So it's hard to guess what it is. The difficulty of it is in a dry year where you don't have a lot of seeding events. When you really need them, you might not be able to seed the clouds as much as you can, but we have pretty good data. And maybe I'll try to get that for you, what happened over a period of years, but it's been scientifically shown in places other than just the laboratory that it works.
Thank you, Chairman Eklund, and at your leisure, if you can get me that data, that would be great, no rush.
Representative Larson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
In some of the data, it's showing that estimated cost is $11 to $22 per acre foot, which is considerably cheaper than many other things we try to get projects. So that might help too.
Any further questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Moved by Representative Walters, do pass, seconded by Representative Simpson. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'm sorry. The director only made it through the top 7 or 8 projects. Did you want him to finish down 2, or did you already speed read ahead?
Yeah, go ahead and finish out the projects.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to pass it, go ahead. I'm fine with that, but I'd be happy to provide the information as well. So the next projects are level 3 projects from our water development account 2. The first one is the Interstate Irrigation Reservoir Irrigation District improvements. This is an agricultural project in Sweetwater County. Total appropriation request on a 67% grant is for $2,827,400. Next project, another agricultural project, or excuse me, this is for rehabilitation of a water line to Midwest Edgerton. It's the Salt Creek Transmission Pipeline Project. The total request is for $7,316,400, 67% grant. And this is to replace about 7 miles of pipeline between the Casper and Midwest that supplies the water to those two communities. The next two projects in this block are material only grants, where we will pay invoice price for materials, and then all of the engineering and work is provided by the sponsor. And the first one is the Shoshone Irrigation District improvements, appropriation of $240,000. And then the Sidon Irrigation District Rehab 2021, appropriation request of $576,000. The total request from Water Development Account 2 for level 3 projects is $10,959,800. I will also note that the Salt Creek Transmission Pipeline Project and the Shoshone Irrigation District Improvements Project are contingent on a transfer request from Water Development Account 1 to Account 2, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then I'll just carry on real quickly because it'll go quickly. The next block of projects are amendments to existing projects. The first one is the sponsors contingency fund for account 2. This is the rehab account. We're requesting $1.5 million to replenish our contingency account. This is an account we use when bids come in high and we want to keep the project going, or if something were to come up in a project, we would have this account that we could dip into to just keep the project going, so we don't have to wait a year to keep a project going. The next project is the Ethity water supply. This is a time extension only project. Easements held up this project. The next two projects are the small water project programs, both for new development and for the rehab account. We're requesting $1 million for the new development small water program and $500,000 for the rehabilitation account. The next project is the Arapahoe water supply project. This is another time extension, issues with easements again on that. The next project, this is an amendment. The request is to change the name from the Sheridan Area Water Supply to the City of Sheridan as the sponsor. It's simply just to change the name of the sponsor. They treat the system and operate and maintain pretty jointly, and they've got some additional funding sources that they use, so they're just requesting to change the name. And then the last one is the Lance Creek Water and Sewer District. This amendment, all it's doing is authorizing the commission to transfer the ownership of a well that's already been drilled to the Lance Creek District. The value put on that well for the construction cost was $33,000. So we'll work with the district that it's upon their request that they purchase this well and operate and maintain it themselves. So that's what the amendment is for on that. And then the last part of the bill is just to request a transfer from existing funds in Water Development Account 1 to Account 2. We've got a larger demand on Account 2 than we had money for. So we're asking for a transfer from Account 1 to Account 2 for those purposes.
Okay, further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So that last item brings up a thought in my mind. I was wondering about, excuse me, how are you calculating? I mean, I'm assuming you're expecting a decline in revenues. And I'm wondering how you're working that in, because we don't see all the applications you're getting in terms of what you're approving. And how are you dealing with that moving forward?
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Schwartz, all of these accounts are funded. Nothing is general fund. All of these accounts are funded from a distribution from the mineral severance tax, and it's the first 155 million of that. And looking at the Craig, it's still pretty positive for that. So we're not looking at, unless something changes legislatively, we're not looking at a reduction in our funding for that. But to that point, we spent a lot of considerable amount of time in the interim, and we've developed a overall agency or program prioritization list. So in the event that funding is short, we will be able to prioritize all programs and all projects with a single prioritization list. So we are ready to address that if it were to come up.
Thank you, and it's my error. I forgot how that flow chart worked.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gephardt, on the ETHD and Arapahoe projects, is that the second or third extension we give them?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the ETHD is probably the third extension on that. And we've had talks with our commission, and we feel that this is probably the last time we would recommend an extension on that. It's time for them to get that work done. And then the Arapahoe, I believe, this is their first extension for that.
So, Mr. Chairman, in the problems isn't so much the tribes, it is the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so would you mind just making a note, maybe let's get together maybe between sessions, and I'd really like to make that part of a discussion the Tribal Relations Committee has with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We run into that all the time, and maybe if we're holding some of that funding over hostage, maybe we can stimulate a little movement there. I know it's frustrating to both tribes, and it's frustrating to you guys, and it is to us. And those airship land trust stuff is difficult, but you know, I am happy to help there where we can.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see Mr. Gephardt taking a note, so I don't want to interrupt him.
Go ahead.
But I have a question for him. The transfer up from Water Development 1 to Water Account number 2, I don't have the history in front of me, but have we transferred from one account to the other in the past? And if so, how many times or how much money do you recall or have that in front of you?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Walters, and I've only been here a year, so I'm going off memory a little bit and of what I've picked up. But transferring from account 1 to account 2, I have not seen that in the recent past. We have periodically transferred from funds from our Buffalo Bill account to some of these other accounts as well. But we just did that last year, and I believe that request was about 7 million. But we had we're on the second phase of the biennium, and we looked at our balances in account 1 and 2. So this year we're just requesting just from account 1 to account 2, rather than bringing in funds from, say, Buffalo Bill or one of our other revenue accounts.
Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Now, do we have a motion? Moved by Representative Larson, second by Representative Simpson for due pass. Roll call, please.
Chairman, members of the committee, voting on House Bill 44, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye, sorry.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Mr. Chairman.
Okay, next we've got State Parks Account, Expenditure Authority, House Bill 58. Who do we have for that? If anybody. Anyone from travel? Or from state parks?
Yeah, I'm bringing them in now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Newsom and Representative Chairman Flitner. Who's going to present this?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to hand this off to Representative Newsom, and I believe Deputy Director Nayland is also would like to also participate.
Okay, we'll let him in. Go ahead, Representative Newsom.
Mr. Chairman, this has to do with how the State Parks Department is allowed to spend some of their money. So as we go through this bill, on page 1, the money that they collect is allowed to be spent for capital construction. And then if you go down to on page 2, line 7, we're asking that the percentage that they can use for other things, for maintenance, administrative, and operational costs, be increased to 60%, not more than. And they do a really good job of the not more than piece, so they are very efficient in how they spend their money. The challenge becomes that from 2016 to 2020, there's been a 36% increase in visitation to our state parks. And that means a lot of stress and need for more seasonal staff, as well as more maintenance as we get more and more numbers into our state parks. So the capital construction needs, although they exist, we need maybe a little less capital construction and a little more money allotted to maintenance of the facilities we have so that they don't deteriorate to the point that they need to be replaced.
Okay, there's the presentation and discussion. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Newsom, I think the one thing that brings my ears forward a little bit is inserting the term administration. You know, those funds were generally indicated or were preserved to or put in place so we could, as you pointed out, do capital construction and major maintenance and some other things. And now we're going to use it for administration. So if you can explain to me a little more what that means, because I think we've generally covered administration of state parks through their budgeting process. And I'm a little concerned that we would then be diverting money that they generate on their fuel tax and park fees to maintain these facilities for the administration of them.
So I guess under administrative costs, if you look at the bill on page 2, lines 10 through 13 state that there will be no additional full-time employees or increases of salary or overtime pay for full-time employees. But as we get more and more visitors, the need for seasonal employees exists.
Would, Mr. Chairman, follow up? If they took a cut in their administrative budget, would they be able to supplement it? It's not an increase.
Mr. Chairman, I might like to pass that over to Nick Nayland, who's joined us.
Go ahead, Nick.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, could you repeat that, please?
Well, I'm just concerned that that by reduction of your budgeting process for full-time employees, and if there's a reduction in there or that you're not using these funds to supplement that.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Representative Larson, the intent is, as Representative Newsom said, for us to be able to increase our maintenance efforts and to hire additional seasonal folks. We're adding the words operate, we're requesting the addition of the words operations and administration to cover unforeseen circumstances. The fees that you mentioned, Representative Larson, the gas tax Fees that go to our snow and ORV programs are completely unaffected by this. They will not change, and they will go directly to those programs.
So the intent is to hire additional personnel to administer the parks, or for like part-time personnel when the parks are open, is that right?
Mr. Chairman, the TPO1 part-time seasonal positions, that's correct.
And how many additional employees do you intend to retain and where?
Mr. Chairman, the additional employees would be system-wide, and I would have to poll our district managers to get you an exact number, but I can do that.
What type of employees will they be? Are they law enforcement? Are they groundskeepers? What are they doing?
Mr. Chairman, and that's part of the issue right now. Right now, the definition of the bill only allows us to hire maintenance staff. The definition of the statute only allows us to hire maintenance staff. The operations and administration language change would allow us to also hire folks such as fee entrance station workers, fee collectors, and additional law enforcement staff. The Kirk Gowdy, for example, was up over 500% last year, which created a considerable number of fee collection and law enforcement issues. That's just one example of a park that was very overwhelmed by the increased attendance, and the language change will allow us to address those issues as well as maintenance.
So if this was not approved, where would this money be expended instead of on personnel?
Mr. Chairman, if the entire bill did not pass?
Correct.
We would have to look for places within our budget to offset the phase 2 and 3 cuts from the governor.
Further questions? Representative Larson.
So then the reality of this bill is to offset your step 2 and step 3 cuts?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, that is part of the reason why we're asking for this increase, yes.
Representative Walters, you think you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Chairman Nicholas's question, if we just go to the language that discusses increasing from 30% to 60%, if that were to not pass, where does the remaining 70% go? Does that money go to the general fund as opposed to being retained within your account? Does that money stay in the account until the account grows and you ask for major maintenance or capital construction projects from the legislature to be funded out of that account? Just a little more information on that as we are discussing the money of it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Representative Walters, any unexpended funds stay in that special revenue account and are designated for capital construction projects.
Representatives.
That's what I thought.
Or Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Nick, I'm having a hard time phrasing this. If we don't increase that percentage, and ordinarily you would just be asking in a budget request to fund this with general funds, is that correct?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Representative Schwartz, that's correct.
Further questions? Okay. Do we have a motion on Representative Walters?
Move do pass.
Representative Schwartz for a do pass. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you're voting on House Bill 58, State Parks Account Expenditure Authority. Representative Kinner.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
No.
Representative Schwartz.
Aye.
Representative Simpson.
Aye.
Representative Stiff.
Aye.
Representative Walters.
Aye.
And Chairman Nicholas.
Aye. for
Eight
now.
aye, 1 no, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, what do we have left?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's 5 minutes, appears to be about 4 minutes till we go back into session, so maybe time to wrap up.
Yeah, we've got 2 remaining, plus 1 that's coming back. So we'll take those on adjournment, 5 minutes from adjournment. All right, folks? Okay, we'll see everybody on the other side. Thanks, everybody.